I'm Dr. Sarah Andries. Welcome to the Leadership Snapshot Podcast, where we discuss leadership experiences, lessons, and look behind the scenes to inspire your leadership growth. My definition of growing as a leader is that every day you become more self-aware, more aware of others, and more of an impact. You grow so that the people around you can grow as well. So congratulations on wanting to be a leader of impact. I promise to support your journey every single episode. So let's get started. Welcome back, everyone. Today, my guest is Tim Adour, and I'm going to let Tim introduce himself to you guys, but I want to tell you just one snippet. Tim was part of my PhD program, and he's getting really close to finishing up and becoming Dr. Tim. So I am so excited that you've agreed to talk to me today, Tim. So welcome, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you. It's great to be with you. Yeah, very, very close. I get a date and then I'll be done. I cannot wait for that to happen. Tim Adour. I live and work in the Bronx, New York City. I have been the pastor of a church here for the last 11 years. Prior to that, my wife and I were in Syracuse, New York, which is upstate northern New York. But we made the transition from green lawns to the urban jungle, and it's been quite a transition, but things are going well. I'm the father of 2, but more importantly, I'm the grandfather of 4.
Awesome.
So that's awesome. Yeah. So my leadership training has been, my master's degree is in organizational leadership, and of course my PhD is in leadership studies from Johnson with Sarah in our cohort. So that's the brief Tim Adour.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about our cohort is I think we started out with 19.
Something like that. It was
a huge number.
20. Yep, just under 20. Yeah.
And then right now there are 4 of us on track to, 3 of us are going to finish up this year. The 4th is probably next year. David, I'd say, is probably next year.
That's what it looks like. Yes.
Yeah. So there's only 4 of us who are going to be done. And it was a hard journey, but I thought it was good. I learned a lot.
Yeah, I agree. The classes were incredible. I just really, really enjoyed the classes. When you hit the dissertation part, it gets a little more intense. I can't say I enjoyed it, but I did learn a lot. All in all, it was a great experience.
So, Tim, what has been the biggest leadership lesson that you've had to learn?
I thought about that, knowing you would ask, and I said to myself, that's kind of like asking, which child do you love the most? Because
all right, you can do more than one.
They're all such great lessons. But I will say this: as I got older, I started to pastor larger churches. The first church I pastored was small, started out with 25 people, ended up becoming 150 people. But then I went to another church and there were 500 people. Then this church is around 1,100. Now I bring that up for this reason, is that I realized as I got to that middle-sized church that I was trying to lead them in the way I led the smaller organization. And when we think church, people don't realize that it's an organization. It's just like any other business in every sense of the word. There's income, there's outflow, there's you need to manage, you need to lead, so you're a CEO, all of these things. All right, all that to say this. The biggest lesson I learned was to have the long view of leadership. And that has a few aspects to it. If you have the long view of leadership, number one, what you do today is going to affect tomorrow. So thinking through exactly what I'm going to do and being strategic. Strategic thinking says that I have insight into the present and I have foresight into the future. And a lot of times a leader will look only at the insight part. They won't look down the road and think about how this is going to affect the organization later. The second thing about having a long view is the bigger an organization grows, the more the leader needs to multiply themselves. One of the huge mistakes I made when I went to the second congregation that was around 500 people, it was trying to do everything myself. And when you try to do that, of course, you diminish your returns. And one of the things I had to learn was, when I say multiplying myself, I mean training people to do things that I don't necessarily have to do. And then, of course, there's a lot of elements to that. Number one is making sure you train them properly. Number two, make sure they understand what you're training. And number three, once they have been trained, release them. The control freak in every leader wants to go back and oversee and micromanage, but of course that's counterproductive. So when I got to this church in the Bronx, being as large as it is, in a lot of ways I'm no longer a pastor. In a lot of ways I'm a CEO. When you've got this many people and this many departments and all of these gears turning, there's no way I can have interaction with everybody in the congregation. It's impossible. So the way I've had to handle that is to multiply myself and train people, release people, so that I can do the things that I need to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So when you were younger, did you envision that this is where you were going to be?
No, never. I thought that the first place we were at, a little tiny town, very rural type of town, total opposite of who my wife and I are. We fit better in the city than we do in the rural setting, but I really did think that's where I would be. But things happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So what advice would you give to somebody who is just starting out in leadership? They don't have it all figured out yet, and they want to make an impact in the world. What would you tell them?
I have a philosophy, and with everybody I've trained, I have said this, that I, as a trainer, I mentor people, I coach people, I develop people. I can give anybody the leadership tools to become a good leader. But what I can't do is train the heart. The heart is first. I can give somebody all sorts of tools, but if they don't know how to use it, the tools can become dangerous. You don't give a 5-year-old the keys to the car because they're not prepared. So I have this whole pre-training thing that I do, where I take people through several weeks of learning how to self-evaluate, learning how to look within themselves and find those areas that might hinder them from becoming a good leader. So my advice to everybody in the beginning is, don't go to a leadership seminar that's going to give you A, B, C, D on how to become a good leader. The first step is to become very, very self-reflective. There is a phenomenal book. It's a little book. You can read it in a day and a half, 2 days. It's called Leadership and Self-Deception. It doesn't even have an author. It's by the Arbinger Institute. And it's this great book that begins the process of saying, we're self-deceived, but we don't know we're self-deceived because we're self-deceived.
Yep.
And to go through that book and to go through the process of becoming self-aware is the first step in becoming a leader. Then you can start learning the ABCs on what to do.
Yep. That's amazing advice. I actually am working on a free mastermind or masterclass that's going to come out in about 3.5, 4 weeks. And that's one of the things that I talk about is we have to be aware. We have to be aware of ourselves. And I have a class that I teach as well. It's called First Lead Yourself.
Yes, totally. You know, when I travel a lot and doing leadership seminars, and I got to the point when I go wherever I go, I mean, I've been all over the world, I start there. I used to start with all the tools, but no more. Let's start with, who are you? Why do you think this way? What is it that you think? And I'll add this, that a lot of times we're self-deceived. So we think we have it right when we don't. We need a third party. We need somebody that will be honest with us and say, you're a jerk. Knock it off. You shouldn't be doing that. You can't be talking that way. You can't be doing this. You can't be doing that. So it's not a matter of simply self-evaluation, but opening yourself up to someone you trust who can help you become the person you need to be. Right. I mean, frankly, I've done two things. I've gone to a therapist and I've hired a life coach. I've done both so that I can learn about myself so that I can then become a better leader.
Yeah, I think it gets interesting, especially, I know we were talking about entry-level leaders or beginning leaders, but the reality is that the bigger leader you are, so if you're the CEO or you're the main person, the less likely you are to find somebody who will speak that truth to you.
It's very, very true. You have to, in my opinion, you have to find that person outside of your organization. If they're in your organization and you're a top leader, they're going to be intimidated by you and they won't tell you the truth. You need somebody who doesn't care if you get upset at them.
Yeah.
But if you got to start at the bottom, even the beginning leader wants to become the CEO. We all do.
Yeah.
But you're not going to get there and do what you need to do or be the kind of leader you should be if you don't start with self-evaluation.
Yeah. Amazing advice, Tim. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on my podcast with me today.
You are more than welcome. Great to see you. And I'll see you at graduation.
I know. I'm so excited.
If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure you subscribe so that way you can hear new podcasts that come out every week. Embrace your journey, and we'll talk to you next week.